Welcome to part 2 of the natural law episode on a philosophy for life. This one is gonna be about consciousness and the brain, still continuing with Mark Passio's natural law slides because they are just so good. He offered them for download, so why not use, what's the English saying? Never change a winning. Why change what is not broken? Why fix what is not broken, or whatever? So consciousness in the brain. So your consciousness is the ability to recognize patterns and meaning with respect to events taking place both within oneself and in the realm in which the self exists and operates. It's your lens through which you perceive reality. And as we said in the previous episodes, the higher your consciousness, the more often your perception will actually align with reality. I'm not saying anybody is complete. I mean, maybe there are human beings that are completely aligned with reality, but it's very hard because you just cannot shake your perceptions, and your perceptions are shaped by so many things that happen in your life, by your upbringing, by your experiences, that you will have a certain perception of reality. Though whether that is an accurate one depends on your consciousness. The higher the consciousness, the more accurate your perception of reality. We express our consciousness through our thoughts, emotions, and actions. And the goal is to act as you speak, as you think, as you feel, right? That's the goal. Obviously, our central computer is the brain, so that will take center stage here. In anything that is about perception, about consciousness, our brain health plays a critical role. So it's extremely important for human beings to become familiar with the brain's basic structure and functions. And I'm emphasizing here basic structure and functions. This is not a neuroscientific seminar, obviously. I'm not a neuroscientist, and it's obviously much more complex, and you can go much more in depth on all of these topics. But this is just the basics. There are three main complexes comprising the human brain. The R complex, the reptilian brain, the lowest brain, which facilitates basic survival functions. The limbic system, or the mammalian brain, which facilitates human emotion. And the neocortex, the human brain, which facilitates higher thought functions and conscience. Here's a little graphic of where they are located in the brain. So the brain stem, the R complex, which guides our survival mechanisms, is the lowest brain. On top of that sits the limbic brain, the mammal brain, which guides the emotions, amongst other things. And then the neocortex for higher order thinking. Again, a rudimentary breakdown. The left brain takes care of all the intellectual functions like logic, analytical thought, science, math. The right brain is the intuitive side. It's where we get our creativity, that enables us to think holistically and develop things as compassion, but also to accept things. The left brain is what makes us overly skeptical, and skepticism is good, but you can't go too far, because if you don't accept truth, if it stares you in the face, then that's to your own detriment, and sometimes things might sound fantastical to somebody with a left brain, like spiritual law to a heavily left brain person will sound insane. However, it's not. It's a very real thing, and you'll have an easier time accepting that if your brain is balanced. So the neocortex has two hemispheres. The left brain hemisphere largely facilitates logical and scientific thought, while the right brain hemisphere largely facilitates creativity and compassion. When both hemispheres are in balance, the neocortex acts in its proper role as the executive command center of the human brain. And true intelligence, which is intellect and creativity, is born. So intelligence doesn't mean that that you're the greatest academic. That may mean you have a great intellect. But intelligence combines both the intellect and the creative part, the generative principle. That's why it's intelligence, gen for generative. And both is required for true intelligence, a holistic intelligence, not just about the intellect. If a human being's left brain hemisphere becomes chronically dominant, the R complex will take over executive function of the brain. And the person will become ruled by selfishness and base desires and develop a personality based in domination and control. This is because, you're overcritical and over-skeptical and unable to, show emotions. Because that's what happens in your brain if you're chronically left brain. Your emotional part, the mammal brain, is shut down and you only operate on the lowest brain, the reptile brain, which guides your survival instincts and obviously your reproductive instincts as well. That's why so many people are obsessed, or there's such an obsession with sex, because people are only in their left brain all the time, all day, thinking about how to make their lives work, where to get the next paycheck, like thinking and scheming how to, and in their jobs as well, it's like they are all so heavily left brain. It's like so many jobs need you to just think analytically all day and, work with Excel tables all day and write, and all day your left brain is mostly stimulated. So naturally your emotional brain is going to be shut down and you're going to be operating in the survival instinct all the time. Fight or flight mechanism. People are anxious and afraid of not surviving all the time because of they might not have a job or might not have their next paycheck. It all leads to people just operating in their lowest instincts. The right brain, if the right brain hemisphere becomes chronically dominant, the limbic system will take over executive function of the brain, and the person will become ruled by their own emotions and develop a personality based in submissiveness and naivete. So that's the other thing you see in society, is all these people that are only reacting emotionally. That's because they've maybe convinced themselves to just accept everything. It's like they're I can't really change anything, and I'm just going to submit to the rulers because they know what to do. I mean, what do I know? And then at the same time be very gullible to whatever these rulers say. That's because the right brain is dominant, chronically dominant, and it shuts down the R complex, so you will kind of lose your survival instincts, and that's why people can play with you like a toy. And that's the slave thing. Whereas the left brain, chronically dominant person develops a master think, because they lose their emotional side. They won't have compassion for other human beings, and they will want to rule and control them. But basically because they are afraid. That's what happens when you become over-skeptical and left-brainly. Everything's a threat, and human beings cannot be trusted, and so you want to control them, and you become a dominator, a master. The left side, to sum this up, the left brain chronic dominance can lead to rigid skepticism, scientism, atheism, solipsism, moral relativism, social Darwinism, eugenics, authoritarianism, if this part of the brain is chronically dominant. The right brain can lead to naivete, blind belief, religious extremism, solipsism as well, unworthiness, self-loathing, or the follower mentality and willing slave mentality, if this part is chronically dominant. And to control your mind, you basically just have to be kept in one imbalance or the other. And the rulers don't really care which side you are imbalanced on. It's as long as you got one imbalance, your neocortex isn't operating. You're either overly emotional, or you're overly, overly, how would you say, ruthless and, without compassion. For me, the more common thing is to be very left brain in my daily job, say, all day long, and then when I get home, I don't watch TV, but what happened when I used to watch TV is you are left brain all the time, and you just want to, you come home and say, I just want to shut my brain off, which is another word of saying I need to, engage my right brain. And then what people usually just sit in front of Netflix, and then their accepting brain, the right brain, it just takes up in all this garbage. It's the same thing when you come home after work, you just switch on the news, your right brain is on, and it just takes in all the information, and you're in the accepting mode in that moment, because you're operating on the right brain. And that's why you're soaking up all this bullshit that's presented to you on TV, and that doesn't help, develop a balanced brain, because that news on TV will just tell you how fucked up the world is, and all the Netflix shows will tell you how fucked up this world is, and you will accept all of that with your right brain, and then the next day you wake up and you're like, fuck, what world are we living in when it's a beautiful place and not at all that bad, So the balance is so important, so that your neocortex is able to operate as your executive command center. I apologize for the brash cut, for the abrupt change of scenery, but when cycling home after doing the natural law episodes, I realized I had forgotten one crucial bit at this point, where we talked about the schism in the human brain, and it can either be left brain or right brain, and to what kind of thinking that leads. I wanted to add one part, because that schism in your brain that influences how you think will obviously also influence your worldview. The left brain individual, the heavily left-brained, imbalanced individual, will develop a worldview of randomness, where everything is just a giant accident. There's no creator, no underlying intelligence in nature. There's no such thing as spiritual law, natural law. Existence has no purpose other than to continue to exist, and it's also what leads to worldviews of scientism, atheism, totalitarianism. Whereas the right brain imbalance will lead to a worldview of determinism, where everything is already preordained, the complete opposite of randomness. So God controls every event in creation, all occurrences are preordained, free will is an illusion that doesn't exist, and since God controls everything, change is impossible. Action is ultimately meaningless, and that imbalance, the right brain imbalance, is what you find in heavily religious extremists, and it's also the mentality behind slave thing. We said that earlier, but these are the worldviews. And as I said earlier, the rulers don't really care which imbalance you carry, because as you might see, there are governments around the world that basically appeal to different type of imbalance types. But the truth, as so often in nature, lies in the middle, in the balance, and that is that there is a deterministic element to life on this earth, and that is what this whole video, this whole episode on natural law is about, because natural law is that which is determined. You can't get around them. The natural laws, like the physical laws, the spiritual laws, are unbreakable, and if you break them, you will suffer the consequences. So that is the deterministic element to life on this earth. But there is also a random component to it. It is not all determined, and that is your free will and your capacity to choose. And so both things are clearly in effect in nature. Natural law, the deterministic component, and free will, the random component. And I just found it important to add that, because if you are a balanced individual, no form of authority will appeal to you. You won't accept authority because you aren't a slave, but you're also not gonna see justification in all the rulers that say, but there needs to be somebody in power because people just can't be trusted, and people, the world will just sink into chaos if there's no authority, because it's all a giant accident anyway. What if nobody keeps the other people in check? But if you are balanced, you won't be subject, you won't fall for any of those fairy tales. If you are balanced, you will reject anybody that claims authority over you for any of these bogus reasons, and you will embrace true freedom with all the responsibilities that it takes, that come with it. And that is so important. That's why I just had to add that. And yeah, we'll delve into more about the human brain and how it's programmable in episode 3. Or in part 3 of the Natural Law episode. Thanks for listening and have a great life.